Out of all the Need for Speed games I've played, Carbon is always the one I end up coming back to. Maybe it's because the game is short and replayable, but it also may be due to the customization features. Let's take a look at Need for Speed Carbon's car customization to see how it holds up as a creation feature. While it's easy to place parts or a few vinyls onto your car, making adjustments to the vinyls can be a bit of a chore, as everything moves at a snail's pace, which can be rather aggravating. On the plus side, this does make your adjustments more precise. While it lacks many of the tools that more modern car customization has, such as coordinates and angles showing up, it does feature a mirror tool that allows you to paste whatever you place on a car on the opposite side. I'll give the ease of use category an A rating, as while there is still a lot of room for improvement, it doesn't feel too agonising to put something together. That being said, however, if you are serious about car customization and want to make something artistically complex, Need for Speed Carbon might not be the best choice. Need for Speed Carbon may not have the same amount of features as Underground 2, but it does feature the ability to reshape and size certain body parts of your car via the game's Auto Sculpt feature, which also allows for the option to place individual body parts on your car as opposed to just slapping on a body kit. The custom HUD from Most Wanted is nowhere to be seen here, but everything else that featured in Most Wanted's customization returns in Carbon, and Auto Sculpt more than makes up for the lack of the HUD recolouring. Basically everything you need is here in Need for Speed Carbon, but aside from Auto Sculpt, there's nothing really new here. It's certainly a step up from Most Wanted in the features category, but it's still missing stuff like neons, split hoods, spinners, trunk customization, full body carbon fibre conversion, headlight colours, nitrous colours and hydraulics that previously featured in Underground 2's customization. I'm going to give this category a B rating, since it is still technically a downgrade from a previous entry, but if you can tolerate the lack of all the bells and whistles, there's still a lot to play around with in Need for Speed Carbon, feature-wise. Flexibility in Need for Speed Carbon is a mixed bag. In terms of body options, you have up to 4 body kits to choose from. Should you choose instead to Auto Sculpt, bear in mind that you only have a choice of up to 4 front and rear bumpers, and these are shared between cars, so you'll have 2 completely different cars share the same bumper options. Therefore, if you want to have bumpers that are unique to the car you are customising, you'll need to use body kits. On the flip side, there's a nice assortment of spoiler and wheel customisations to choose from, particularly aftermarket rims. Where the game truly excels, however, is in its assortment of vinyls. Need for Speed Carbon has a sizable assortment of single and body vinyls, as well as shapes for the more complex designs. Once again, I'll be giving this category a B rating, since while it's great in some areas, it's lacking in other areas. While it may not look as good as the more modern Need for Speed games, the creative vehicles look pretty good for a game originally released on PS2, particularly if you play the PC version on high settings with the widescreen fixed mod. The downside is that the auto-sculpted parts tend to look rather ugly, particularly the bumpers. I'd prefer to use body kits for this reason, as they just look nicer, though I suppose it depends on the car you're making. Ultimately though, I think that your created car tends to stick out like a sore thumb, not because of how ugly it is, quite the contrary. Rather, the other cars tend to not have all the crazy customizations that yours has. I'll give the aesthetics category another B, because it really doesn't look that bad at all for a PS2 game. Just don't auto-sculpt a smiley face on your Viper's front bumper. It doesn't look good, trust me. Being a racing game, it's natural to expect racing to be the primary purpose of the vehicles you create. However, there are also drift events to mix things up a bit. You can also free roam around the city in your car and take screenshots of your work if you want. There's even a photo mode. It's always nice to see your fancy car turn up to an event and tear up the streets. Sadly though, I suck at driving with the third-person camera, so I usually see nothing but asphalt, but even if you do, you can still see your car during moments where you are airborne or when you hit a pursuit breaker, as well as at the end of a race. Quite frankly, I don't know what else you could possibly want out of a game with car customization. There is a tuning feature for performance parts, but it feels a tad more limited and is kind of broken compared to that of Underground 2, as they got oversteer and understeer mixed up for some reason. The purpose of the aesthetic style of car customization is to lower your vehicle's heat from COPS. However, you can instead choose to just pay to remove the heat, as opposed to changing the look of your car, which is convenient, but it does kind of diminish the purpose of applying cool vinyls and body parts to your vehicle, though given the fact that most of us just want to create stuff, this is hardly an issue. The functionality category gets an A rating, since aside from the tuning being more limited than its predecessors, there isn't much else to complain about here. Finally, we have limitations, and there are many things to bring up here as compared to Underground 2 and especially Most Wanted. Carbon is a vast improvement in this department. While you are only allowed up to 6 cars in your garage, with the exception of pink slip cars, you are allowed to create up to 20 cars to be used in Quick Race via the My Cars section of the main menu, which is handy if you have friends who want to play split screen with you and want to make their own car, or if you just want to make more cars outside of career mode. The best part about Need for Speed Carbon is that you can have up to 20 vinyl slots as opposed to just 4 in the Underground games and 1 in Most Wanted. For me, this is the one thing that ultimately makes Need for Speed Carbon the better game of the bunch for car customization, because vinyl creation has always been the best part in my opinion. Sorry Underground 2, but I'll take having more freedom to place vinyls over having suicide doors any day of the week. This category gets an A rating for allowing more vinyls than previous entries, though it still doesn't get an S rating since there are still limits that you don't see in a lot of the more modern racing games featuring car customization. Overall, Need for Speed Carbon is a pretty good option for those looking to customize vehicles, but it's far from being the best. As a game though, it just happens to be one of my favourite arcade racing games of all time, so I consider it to be the best overall package personally.